What's going on, guys? Matt at Middleton Motorsports here. Another episode of Behind the Tune. Super cool deal on the dyno today. We have a 1960 Chevy Apache. I'm gonna flip the camera around here so you guys can take a look at this. You can obviously see this is not a stock Apache 10. Heavily modified into a pro touring style, kind of stuff you see on, you know, SEMA builds, and you know, I get kind of speechless with it because there's just so much to cover here, but super cool build. Lots to unpack on this one just to kind of get started of what this is. Obviously you can see the stance on it. It's way lower than a factory Apache would be. A lot of custom body work, a lot of custom work. I mean, the whole truck is the workmanship on this truck is, you know, second to none, I think. Very well done. So what this is obviously we have this body, this Apache body on, it's on a Roadster shop frame. So it's a completely aftermarket frame. Let's see if I can get underneath here. And sometimes the camera doesn't do this justice, but you can see here's a trans cooler. It's got a 4-link style suspension, Watts link. This is, again, the whole frame is aftermarket. It's got this super cool stainless exhaust, if you can see that peeking through, completely TIG welded, polished, or brushed stainless with, I believe, Borla mufflers. Air ride, it's sitting on RideTech Air Ride. Everything is loomed really nice with little billet looms, and you know, it's all hard line underneath for fuel. Really nice build, super well done. The wheels, they look like Steelies. Those are actually Forge Line 3-piece wheels, custom made for this truck. The paint on this truck, this looks like patina. This is actually paint. So the truck itself is gold, this gold color, and this patina is layered on with, you know, my understanding, in sort of an airbrush style. I mean, it's just insane. It's definitely a showstopper, and I love being parts of projects like this, a part of a project like this. Obviously, it's here for tuning work. It's on the dyno. It's here for tuning work. This gentleman called us, the shop out of Marion, Illinois, way down the southern tip of Illinois, called Level 7 Motorsports, high-end shop. They do, my understanding is Jesse and his team do a lot of race car, IMSA style racing stuff, race car builds. And they took this project on for a gentleman, customer of theirs. And he actually, the guy that actually owns the truck, the gentleman that owns the truck, saw me in one of our videos, a video online of me doing some other LT4 tuning, and he wanted to bring it up to us here and have us dial this thing in. So, like I said, there's just so much to unpack here. I could probably do a 45-minute video on just, if we had it up on a hoist, to take a look at what it is, but you guys can kind of get the gist of it, you know, custom frame, custom body, custom paint. It's not completely finished yet. Obviously, they're still doing some work on the body and some trim out. The interior's not completely done yet. They still got upholstery to do. Under the hood here, LT4 GM 2000, you know, I believe the engine is it's a wet sump, so it's a Camaro engine. Couple things done to this, so nothing crazy though. So, you know, obviously it has a custom intake too, but this is like a 5-inch step down to 4 here. You know, nicely made. This cutout for the filter here is super cool, but it's got this massive filter. Yeah, it's, you know, obviously the engine bay is shaved very nicely. All the wiring is tucked down behind. Billet lid. I don't know whose lid this is off the top of my head. I know there's maybe 4 or 5 companies that are making lids for these now. And just by looking at it, I'm not exactly sure, and I forgot to ask Jesse, the owner of Level 7, what lid that is. But billet lid, the Supercharger is ported by, I believe he said Jokerz ported the blower. So it is a ported Supercharger, but we're on stock pulley. So we got a stock upper pulley and we got a stock balancer. So not cranking the blower any harder than stock. But we are seeing a smidge more boost. You know, obviously I've been doing some pulls on this and doing some tuning on it. We are seeing a smidge more boost in stock because of the porting on the blower, and you know, just having this big inlet system on it. It does have, I believe, ultimate headers did the headers for it. I may be wrong on that, but really nice set of headers. And like I said, no Cali converters, right down to a 3-inch X pipe to the Borlas, and then it's stainless. That stainless kind of goes out. The stainless exhaust system goes out the back, just underneath the bumper, and kind of turns down. Cooling system on this thing is super extensive. Yeah, it's, you know, Wizard radiator. It's got a big Stuart Warner pump for the intercooler. All these nice aluminum painted tanks or tanks and coolers. There's trans cooler on this side underneath. There's a oil cooler, engine oil cooler on the other frame rail with fans on it. The whole truck is just, you know, kind of, you know, next level stuff. So, and I know I'm trying to talk about a lot here in a small amount of time. I'm sure if you headed over to their website, Level 7, you'd maybe see more build pictures if you guys are curious about more about this build. I'm trying to cover as much as I can that I know about it. Transmission in this thing is a 4L80, so it's got a little bit of a, to me, and I don't want to talk bad about it, but it's got a little bit of a compromise when it comes to controlling both of these, the engine and the trans. And I shouldn't say compromise, from a tuning standpoint, it makes it a little trickier for me because I can't read enhanced OBD2 data. And after we do a dyno pull, I'll kind of show you the data log on how I had to do this. I can't read OBD2 enhanced data with all the GM stuff I like reading with the TCM plugged in, the CompuShift plugged in, because it's robbing the information off the network, off the OBD2 port to operate. The transmission controller it's receiving all that data and kind of robbing it from the OBD2 port. So all I can really read is OBD2, basic OBD2 data, generic stuff. What I can do though is unplug the TCM. The 4L80 goes into just basically like a default mode, second gear, and then I can read my full GM data, so I can read all the stuff I need to read. And we'll go over that in the data log and kind of show you guys what I'm talking about there. So yeah, it's super cool build. I've been involved in stuff on projects like this in the past, not a lot, but I always get excited when we get to work on stuff like this and take stuff like this in and be parts of this. So with all that being said, this is where we're at so far. So this truck, because of the 4L80, because of the Ford 9-inch, it is going to read. Now this is third gear, 4L80 third gear, so 1-to-1 locked up. But this truck is going to inherently have quite a bit of drivetrain loss because the 4L80s do sap a lot of power. The 9-inches are larger ring gears, larger, heavier internal components. They draw a little bit of power too. But for what this is, for just basically a bolt-on LT4, this is doing really well. The supercharger porting, typically, you know, we'll gain a little power here, lose a little bit of power down here with stock pulleys, I should say, you know, with stock pulley ratios. So, but to be making 624, that's pretty good. On a bolt-on ZL1 10-speed with these mods, let's say you put a cold air on it and headers, you're probably right around the 600 wheel mark. SAE is typically what I see. So this is doing really well. Obviously the ported supercharger is doing work up top. So yeah, it's this thing's super cool. Again, it's got, you know, obviously it's got like a Dakota Digital interior or dashboard. It's got vintage air. Obviously, yeah, like I said, the interior is not done yet. My understanding that even the cab, this cab top is different, and I didn't get the full detail of what exact year this is off of, and maybe I heard them wrong, but I thought they said they did some custom. The top of the cab is different year. You know, this being a 60. But we're gonna do one more pull here. But I just kind of want to walk around this thing a little bit so you guys can see it. It's just super cool. I keep saying that, but I sound like a broken record here, but it's the other cool thing about this, one more cool thing, and then we'll get to the dyno. Air ride. So it's got these pads on the frame, and you can drop the air all the way down, you air this thing all the way out, and it'll sit on these things on the ground. And so it's got that, you know, show truck slam to the ground type of look. Bunch of other little custom touches, you know, like in the bed, there's a compartment for the air ride components, and there's a little drawer when you flip the tailgate down that has storage. Underneath, of course, it's got a wood bed in it, so there's like a center compartment up here, and then there's a drawer when you flip the tailgate down for storage. It's almost like a kitchen drawer with soft close, you know, and there's just a whole bunch of cool stuff about it. Okay, so I'm done talking about the truck. We'll get to the dyno. gonna set the camera down, and we'll do one more pull on it. It's cooled off a little bit, so we might see a little gain. You know, LT4s are pretty sensitive to temperature, obviously. So, but this having the ported blower, you know, the billet lid, the big pump, the big heat exchanger and stuff, the manifold temperatures on this are pretty manageable for an LT4. So, yeah, so one more pull and we'll look the data log over, and we'll talk about the data logs a little bit more, about this kind of switching back and forth between the two modes per se I had to do, and then we'll wrap this one up. All right, guys, so it looks like we picked up a little bit from a little bit of a cooler run, but still within the realm. 6 horsepower better than that previous one. A little bit more torque down here too, but looking at the data log, it was pretty much the same between the red and blue. Like I said, we were off talking to some other customers and stuff, so the truck was sitting for 20 minutes or so. So it got a little cooler on that blue run, the one you just saw. Yeah, so, but otherwise, we're still within the realm of the same timing. The air fuel's the same. Again, manifold temperatures were just a little lower. But otherwise, yeah, this is looking really nice. Nice curve, obviously. That, again, the LT4 blower provides a real fat torque curve. There's always a lot of LT4 stuff. There's always a lot of torque on tap down at the very bottom. I mean, we're talking 600 foot-pounds down at the bottom. And so, and I'll talk a little bit more about having a ported supercharger. This one has, you know, a pretty, I don't want to say that, I don't like using the term hogged out, but they CNC out the inlet of the blower, and just with any other PD blower that, you know, these GT500 stock blowers do the same thing. You tend to lose a little bit of bottom end, but it actually, honestly, in my opinion, on these LT4s, it actually helps the drivability. The LT4 stuff makes so much bottom end torque, especially when you put headers on them, like what this truck has. Even with the stock pulley ratio, you end up with so much torque down in this 2,500 to 3,000 RPM range that it's almost unusable on any sort of street tire. It's like you have to have a drag radial on it. I don't know if you guys are ZL1 or Corvette owners, Z06 owners, and you do bolt-ons on these things, even just stock, you're into the traction control so easily on the tires that come on the vehicle stock. I mean, you roll up onto it, even like, let's say you're in a 10-speed or even a manual, and you're in some of the lower gears, you know, 10-speed, second, third, fourth gear, in a manual second gear, and there's just no, it's not usable, even from the factory. It's just not usable unless you have a stickier aftermarket, you know, drag radial type tire or slick tire on it of some kind. So what the ported blower does is it does take away a little bit of that down here, but it makes it more tractable, really. That's just in my opinion. And you do end up with more up here, which it kind of tilts the boost curve a little more. The LT4s tend to be pretty flat. The ported LT4s, like what this one is, where you give that inlet a pretty decent CNC port and take a bunch of material out, it slows the airflow down at lower blower speeds and lower engine speeds, but at higher engine speeds and higher rotor speeds, it becomes more efficient. So probably a video in the past where I've talked about that on the GT500s also, same type of deal. You end up losing about a pound of boost down to the bottom, but you pick up a pound of boost up top. And that's about what we're seeing with this ported supercharger on this particular application here, being just a bolt-on, a bolt-on engine, just headers with that, you know, that it's got that nice fabricated cold air with that big filter, but it has the stock pulley ratio on it. So we're not turning the blower any faster than stock, yet we are seeing some pretty decent power over what, like a bolt-on ZL1 or a bolt-on Z06. Typically, stock pulleys, headers, cold air, LT4 stuff, you're typically right around the 600 to the wheel mark. And this truck having a 4L80 in it, and again, being just stock boost, stock pulley ratio with headers and a cold air tube, you know, a nice 5-inch cold air pipe. This is really good. You know, obviously the supercharger porting is giving us some pretty decent top end up here, and I am seeing about 11 pounds of boost out of it. So that's about a pound more than what you're going to see out of a stock LT4 pulley ratio with bolt-ons, especially once you put headers. You know, and this truck doesn't have any catalytic converters, it's just mufflers. It's a really nice dual 3-inch stainless like you saw. and we're still making more boost. So obviously that supercharger porting is giving us a decent chunk of power up at the top end. But again, you know, a lot of the time you see some of the LT4 stuff, and it's got big torque, like 650, 670 torque. So we are losing a little bit of torque, but that's really down in the bottom end here. And again, it's not really ever usable. And in something like this, it's already going to be more than enough for the tires that are on it. I know it's got the big wide tires on it, but yeah, so this is looking really good. I'm really happy, again, especially through a 4L80. 4L80 transmissions, very strong. They work really good in if you want an overdrive type of thing. But they do take quite a bit of power to drive. They have big, heavy components in the inside. They are a very high parasitic draw transmission, probably one of the highest. But again, they work good in applications like this, for stuff like this, where you want overdrive, you want durability. They can handle a lot of power. And if you're after an overdrive transmission and you're trying to make big power and you want something that's reliable, it is pretty much the go-to. I know now that some of this 6-speed stuff is getting pretty robust with the builds that are out there, for sure. You know, especially on a GM like this, you could probably get into a 6L90 that's got some stuff done to it and pretty much handle what the 4L80. But the 4L80s can be built, you know, because they share internals with similar internals with a Turbo 400. So very strong transmissions, but they do rob a little bit more power, you know, than you'd typically see even on like a 10-speed, 8-speed, 6-speed for GM, or like a 4L60. So yeah, data log. So kind of what I was talking about in the beginning of the video with the data logging. So kind of a tricky situation here with that transmission, the specific transmission controller. So again, this truck has an E92 PCM, or I should say ECM, engine controller to run the engine, but it's got a CompuShift controller to run the transmission. So what that CompuShift controller is doing, it's taking data off of the network and it's robbing my enhanced data, basically is how I can say it. It's robbing the data that I would normally be reading from the OBD2 part, the enhanced data with all the nice GM PIDs that I want to see, and channels I want to look at. It's robbing it from me, so I can't read that stuff with the engine, or sorry, with the transmission controller in operation. So if I want to be third gear locked up with that transmission controller operating, I got to just be reading OBD2 generic. So I'm kind of stripped down here. But before the video and while I was tuning this thing, so I'm actually, while we're sitting here, I'm going to save this one quick. I did some pulls. So you can see I got some of these logs saved. I did some pulls with the transmission controller disconnected, and on the 4L80, basically that just gives me second gear, it just reverts to second gear in kind of a limp mode situation. So I did do some data logging in that, with that going on, with the TCM disconnected completely. I just unplugged it. Then I was able to get my nice GM enhanced data, so I can read, you know, knock. Obviously, I'm reading a faster sampling rate at that point. I can read, you know, air mass. I could read all the stuff that I want to see on an LT engine, all the direct injection stuff. Yeah, all the torque stuff for the torque modeling, all that stuff. I can read all that stuff, but I was obviously getting real short second gear unlocked dyno pulls, which aren't the great. Well, A, you're not going to get an accurate power reading, so I wasn't even recording power. I was just data logging and making sure that it looked okay. And B, the real short dyno pulls where they're just kind of, and they're only like maybe 2 seconds or a second and a half. It's hard to get accurate data because you just don't have a nice sweep of RPM like this is. So I was bouncing back and forth between the two. I was going between plugging it in, locking it in third gear, doing pulls, looking at my power output. Then I was making some changes to the tune. I was disconnecting the TCM, doing pulls with the TCM unplugged with my, and then I was able to, sorry, this thing's moving around on me, able to bring up my GM enhanced data, making sure my knock sensors were, you know, happy with the timing I was getting, because here I can't log knock. I can't log knock at all. I'm just kind of looking at the timing line. So it is a little trickier to tune just because the data logging was a little bit funky, but I was still able to achieve what I needed to do here with kind of bouncing back and forth. So obviously the pull you guys just saw was TCM hooked up, locked in third gear, so I can actually read what kind of power I'm seeing. So we can kind of look at that first. I'm obviously still able to get wideband data because that's just a channel input into my ProLink cable into my MPVI3 for HB tuners. So I'm able to get wideband data. So we can kind of take a look at that. Typical LT4, I like to be that 0.81 to 0.82 is where I like running LT4s. I don't like running them any leaner than that. I find personally that this is where they make the most power. Yes, you can lean them out, but typically they will start to, for me, from my experience, the wideband I'm using, the DynoJets I use, the way I load them, if you start getting any leaner than 0.82, 0.83, you actually start to lose power. They won't necessarily knock, and they'll take the leaner mixtures fine, but I've just seen you lose power. If you're, let's say you're on the edge of a fuel system or an edge of an injector because you're trying to push some E85, sure, you can lean these things out more and they'll be happy, but typically they'll start to lose horsepower. So I usually try to run them right about 0.82 is my target air fuel, my target lambda, I should say, for an LT4 or a boosted LT1. That's typically my target. And so you can see I pretty much achieved that on this one. There's, just kind of around the peak torque area, it gets a smidge richer, but I'm okay with that. Yeah, so this air fuel looks good. Timing, because again, the data was a little funky down low because I wasn't able to get really good data down in the bottom end here. I was a little soft on the timing, but I have a lot of data from previous bolt-on LT4 combinations, Z06s and ZL1s. I have a lot of data logs and a lot of data and just a lot of, from what I, just my experience, where I kind of know the timing can be. So this is, I will say the timing is still kind of soft. I have 93 octane in this right now. My understanding is this gentleman is going to power tour this car or this truck, and that goes all over the country, and he may not have access to 93 octane. 93 octane isn't available to everybody. So I'm leaving the timing a little soft on it. This could probably be, down at 3,100, 3,500. I could, on 93, and I know I've talked about 93, 91 to 93, there is a difference. The 10% ethanol 93 does, on these boosted late model V8s, there is a difference. And on LT4s, definitely a difference. So you're typically 2, maybe 3 degrees of timing less on 91 octane than you are on 10% 93, 10% ethanol 93. So what I have here is I have some 91 octane timing curve in this, knowing where I need to be because I've done a lot of 91 LT stuff before. I know that I could probably be about 20, maybe 21 degrees down 4,000 RPM. And I know it could probably be, and again, this is with just a bolt-on deal like this with the stock pulley, stock boost, stock-ish boost. I can be closer to 25, maybe 26 at the very top. But I know on 91, this is where they like to run. They like to run upper teens and then kind of that 23, 24 up top. So I have this set up for 91 octane, even though we have 93 in it. I wanted to tune it for the ability for him to run. So if, hey, this station, we're on tour, we're cruising, I need fuel, there's a gas station, pull in, oh, it's only got 91. Oh, but that's okay because I'm tuned for it. That's what I want the scenario to be like. Not, oh, we really got to find 93, or, man, I can't beat on it because I put 91 in it, it's tuned for 93. Yeah, I don't know, just, I don't want there to be compromises like that. And I could make a little bit more power. And I know I've gotten some comments on past channels like, that's kind of disappointing if you're not tuning stuff for its maximum power. Guys, not everybody's out drag racing and roll racing these things. So 10 to 15 at the wheels you're not going to really feel it in a vehicle like this. It's not going to be like, holy crap, that's so much faster. You're not going to notice it. And if you were racing it, if you were drag racing it, it probably wouldn't even be a tenth of a second. Maybe it'd be a tenth of a second, maybe a mile an hour in trap speed. So when we're talking something that's driven on the street and you want to use it in all climate conditions, in all situations, sometimes you're being conservative. There's nothing wrong with being slightly conservative. It's just, there's no reason to wring everything out to the last horsepower And I know I talk about that a lot on the channel. Maybe I'm coming off as being overly conservative. But for stuff like this that gets cruised around and the guy wants to go drive it thousands of miles, I'd rather go towards the side of conservative, because being stranded on the side of the road or not being able to do something because it was tuned for a specific thing kind of sucks when you're in those situations. So, you know, sometimes different situations warrant different style tuning. Anyway, sorry to rant about that, but that's just somehow, you know, I know a lot of the stuff I tune, I tune a lot of different stuff, and you can see that in our videos. And a lot of it's daily driven stuff, it's toured stuff, it's not always race cars. And so tuning race cars is totally different. I get it. If you're at a race, you're trying to win something, there's money on the line, you've put, you know, you're at a no prep race, you've put $200, $500, whatever dollars down to get in, there's thousands of dollars to win, 10,000. I get that. Then you're going to be wringing the thing out, you're throwing the kitchen sink at it. I understand that. But for stuff like this, 10 horsepower is not going to make or break, you know, your driving experience. So, again, I'm tuning this. I have a timing curve in this for 91. It does have 93, but I kind of know where it needs to be for 91. So that's where we're at on the timing. Boost-wise, the top here, you know, you can see we're maybe 10.5 pounds-ish of boost. So yeah, it's making a little bit more boost than you would normally see out of an LT4 with headers and no catalytic converters. I'll make that point, because taking the catalytic converter, if you take like a Camaro or a Z06, a Z01 or Z06, and you put 2-inch long tubes on it and you take the catalytic converters off, you tend to lose half a pound to a pound of boost. You'll lose that boost because you're freeing up restriction in the motor, and the supercharger doesn't have as much to push against, because what it's pushing against is opened up a little more, and it makes less boost. So typically I will see 9 to 9.5 pounds on a bolt-on, you know, like a bolt-on ZL1. We're seeing 10-ish, 10.5. So the porting is definitely working, and we can see that it's reflecting in the dyno graph for sure. So that's the OBD2 data. So you can kind of see, this is where I had the torque converter or the transmission controller off. And sorry, just let me open up my other layout here. So I have several layouts that I saved for different ECUs. So you can see the dyno pull here. This is second gear unlocked. You can see how short the wide open throttle is. So I kind of was rolling up onto it. The other thing that gets, when you're in second gear unlocked with something with this much torque, is it gets real squirrely on the dyno, because there's a lot of torque being applied to the rear wheels. And in a vehicle like this, where I got the bed hanging past those posts on the hoist, it makes me a little nervous when the back end of the truck starts wiggling around. So I like to just kind of roll onto it slowly to kind of get the wheels to kind of set into the rollers, instead of just whacking the throttle and having the truck jerk around. And there's no need for that. You know, we're not trying to break equipment and hurt stuff. So, but it does make for kind of a shorter pull. So it gets a little short, and you can see how short my data set is here then, versus a nice wide, you know, where I can have a nice wide, you know, lots of data points, which I like seeing. I like having longer, you know, it doesn't have to be too long, but longer dyno pulls are nicer because the data is easier to read. But I was still able to reference this to kind of reference all the rest of my GM data. So to make sure, you know, my torque looks good, throttle opening is where it needs to be. My knock sensors especially, because I can log knock. So this little spike here, we'll talk about that. I still have some of the what GM calls burst knock active on this, being just a stock cam bolt-on deal. So when you roll up onto the throttle wide open here, it's going to pull some timing preemptively because of that transition. And that, again, the knock sensors show that. So this knock, when you're logging knock on these GMs, it's going to show all the knock. It's going to show any of the static knock you have dialed in on the static knock retard table. It's going to show that burst knock. So when you roll up on the throttle, the system is pulling timing. So it's going to show all that as knock. It's I differentiate that with logging individual cylinder knock, so you can see that I'm on that spike right there, and there is no individual cylinder knock. So it's not actually the knock sensors. It's just burst knock. And I could data log burst knock and the other knock stuff, but you get this many channels and you can start adding more, because I have a lot of channels here, and it starts to slow down. It starts to bog the data down a little bit, bog the refresh rate, I should say, the sampling rate. So I already know that that's what that is. But otherwise, you can see I do have some dynamic or some static knock dialed in. I left about half the static knock in the LT4. The stock LT4 pulls from cylinder 2, I believe is what it is, 1 or 2. I think it's cylinder 2. I do cut that down on half stock. It'd be like 3 degrees, so I have some of that left over. But yeah, you can see same thing. I'm touching 24 degrees here at 63, almost a red line. Boost is very similar. So I was able to kind of bounce back and forth between these short second gear pulls to kind of verify my knock, and then go back and do full third gear locked pulls to look at my dyno graph and see my power change. So it was a little timely, but we got it done. So yeah, that's going to wrap up the dyno for this one. I still have to, obviously I have for that CompuShift controller, I have a dyno, basically a dyno shift schedule, so it gets up into third gear, locks, and stays there. So I bias the table so it gets up into third gear by about 30 miles an hour. That's about 1,500 RPM, and then I can just roll into the throttle from there, and it will not downshift to third or second or first. It will not unlock the torque converter until basically all the unlock and downshift tables were set to like 20 miles an hour, so the truck has to drop back down below 20 miles an hour to downshift back to first. So I have to go back through now on that controller because I can't save. There wasn't a way to save tunes, or at least what I saw with the app on the phone, to go back to my standard kind of shift tune tables. So I got to go back through that controller, build up my street, obviously my street standard shift schedule. I still have to do that and get it back on the street. And the Jesse at level 7 obviously wanted me to drive this truck around and kind of prove it out as much as I can before they finish this truck and deliver it to the customer, and he can go enjoy it for the rest of the summer and the fall. So yeah, that's going to wrap it up for this one, guys. Super cool project. I really appreciate being a part of projects like this and builds of this caliber. Yeah, it's fun to do this stuff, even though sometimes you run into on projects like this where you're ground off. Sometimes you run into little snags, and that's just typical builds when you're building stuff like this. But yeah, this truck's running really nice. It sounds good, looks good, and we'll get that trans dialed in, and they'll be on their way. They'll be on their way with this one. So we look at the dyno graph one more time. So if you guys scroll to the end of the video, you can kind of just get an idea where we're at with a ported blower bolt-on LT4 in this cool project. So appreciate you guys watching. And like I said, always say, check back on our social media for all the other stuff we're doing with our Outlaw projects, track days, all the other stuff we do here at Motorsports. And that'll wrap this video up. Appreciate you guys watching. We'll talk to you later.